Hello and welcome to the Bloodstream Podcast, a show serving the greater bleeding disorders community, brought to you by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media, and made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. I am your patient advocate and host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I am your healthcare advocate, nonprofit nerd, and your other host, Amy Board, reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
On today's show, the World Health Organization, also known as the WHO, also known as WHO, updated their essential medicines list to improve bleeding disorders care. We're going to talk about that. We've got Jessica Locke, a hemophilia B caregiver and TikToker on. She is here to share how she does her work. And on our latest gene therapy segment, we feature a real-world success story with hemophilia B patient Dominic and his mother. We'll hear how Dominic benefited from gene therapy and how his life has changed. We have got all of that and more on today's episode. Welcome to Bloodstream.
Listeners, as always, thank you for joining us today. And if you like what you hear, if you really like what you hear, please subscribe to the Bloodstream Podcast wherever you listen to those podcasts, and follow us on social media. We're on all of the things.
If you don't like what you hear, you can also subscribe.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, that's true. Even if you don't like what you hear, just subscribe. Don't be weird about it. Just do it.
I also want to remind you, dear listeners, that the Bloodstream Podcast is made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Takeda. Yes, that's right, Takeda. Takeda's got this website, bleedingdisorders.com, where you can find all about Takeda's resources for and commitment to the bleeding disorders community. Takeda Amy Board believes in a world free of bleeds.
Yes. Yes.
And they are dedicated more than ever in their efforts to offer a wide range of programs and support to help patients throughout their treatment journey, wherever on that journey they may be. You can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time, that's bleedingdisorders.com. And for their founding and ongoing support of the Bloodstream Podcast, I would just like to say, thanks, Takeda.
Thank you, Takeda.
You know, on that note of Takeda, and just before we get into some updates from the World Health Organization and their essential medicines list, you know, Von Wende, the factor product for von Willebrand disease that Takeda has had out on the market for a number of years, recently got an expanded indication from the FDA. So there's a pool of patients out there who may be with von Willebrand disease who may previously have not been eligible for or able to receive access to Von Wende, and that may now have changed. So if you are a person with von Willebrand disease, if you are considering your treatment, your management, if you're interested in what other options may be available for you, ask your doctor about Von Wende. Again, it's been out for a few years, but there's a recent indication update that may mean it's now accessible to you and it previously wasn't. So if I may, ask your doctor about Von Wende.
Holy crap, you're such a pro. That was so good. I just want everyone to know that wasn't in the script, that wasn't in the plan. PJL just is so connected.
I just did it, like Jenga.
That was amazing. Now, tell me a little bit about the World Health Organization. Who? They updated their essential medicines list. And if I recall, this was like kind of a conversation and a big to-do. And this is a fairly massive win for our community, our global community.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'm going to go ahead and read a multi-part tweet here from Brian O'Mahony. He is the CEO, I think is the title, CEO of the Irish Hemophilia Society. He's also the former president of the World Federation of Hemophilia and the European Hemophilia Consortium. So he's got credentials. The guy's qualified.
He's also a great dude. He's just a good dude. He's a legit dude.
It never hurts. So he went ahead and posted on September 5th, earlier this month, fantastic news today from the World Health Organization. Following a detailed campaign and 3 submissions from the World Federation of Hemophilia, all the changes they recommended have been made to the 2025 Essential Medicines List. Non-pathogen reduced cryoprecipitate and pathogen reduced cryoprecipitate removed from the list for prophylaxis in hemophilia A and von Willebrand disease, recognizing the increased risk of transfusion transmitted infection. Plasma derived factor VIII and factor IX transferred from complementary to core list. Factor IX complex concentrates removed due to thrombotic risk. Recombinant factor VIII and factor IX added to the core list for prophylaxis and on demand treatment. Emicizumab added for prophylaxis in hemophilia A with and without inhibitors. State value is greatest in inhibitors. Without inhibitors, plasma derived or recombinant factor VIII may represent better value. This is an amazing achievement by the World Federation of Hemophilia, who have safeguarded treatment for many people with hemophilia and von Willebrand disease worldwide. Thanks to the WHO for recognizing the strength and validity of the WFH and supporting submissions. Truly a landmark day for our community. So following 3 submissions and a lot of advocacy work from the World Federation of Hemophilia, as Brian said, all of the recommended changes and updates have been made by the WHO. So a huge win all around.
And Patrick, if I recall, oof, I hope I don't like blow this. The whole deal was that the World Health Organization had put out a draft, or maybe even what they were going to have for these standard guidelines, and they were only going to have cryoprecipitate on as a recommended treatment for hemophilia. Is that correct in terms of like what they recommend globally? And it was just like a huge alarm bell that we need to update this treatment list. Is that correct?
Yeah, cryoprecipitate, pathogen reduced and non-pathogen reduced were prominently placed on the essential medicines list. Hemlibra, emicizumab wasn't on it at all.
Mm.
There were other updates regarding prophylaxis and who should be eligible. So just a multifaceted reason to activate. And again, it's not often like this, where in advocacy and negotiations, you don't usually get everything that you're asking for. But in this case, the WHO appreciated, to Brian's point, the credibility and longstanding history that the WFH has in protecting our population, and they took all recommendations seriously. So just an all-around major win for the global community.
That's awesome. There was a quote here from Don Rodolini, who's the chief operations rather officer of NBDF. She said, "This is a huge step forward for bleeding disorders care. It's a victory for all people living with bleeding disorders throughout the world."
Yeah, for sure. So kudos and thank you to everybody
Mhm.
at the WFH who worked tirelessly to make this a reality. We greatly appreciate that. I want to go from something international, Amy, to something US based and state level based. And that is, we had a screening of Let's
Yes.
Talk, our documentary about the intersection of bleeding disorders and mental health care. And we did it at this past weekend for the Maryland chapter of the National Bleeding Disorders Foundation. And I would just love for you, this is Suicide Awareness Month,
Mhm.
September. We haven't talked a lot about mental health and certainly not suicide on the podcast this month. I think it would be a nice opportunity to just remind people about what Let's Talk is, and if you
Mhm.
could share with us what made this past weekend's screening particularly notable.
Yeah, Let's Talk is in our library of films that we have directed and produced along with support from Sanofi. Let's Talk was really one of the first. It tells the story of 4 to 5 people in the community surrounding their mental health experiences, with their struggles, with their challenges, and ultimately with how they have taken steps to really manage those mental health experiences day to day and really feel like they have control of their lives. It was such a lovely thing to see. We were at the Maryland chapter this past weekend for the screening of Let's Talk, as well as the Science Fair Roadshow. So it was kind of a double whammy, believe, cute little event. It was just one evening on Saturday. And it was so lovely to meet that community. I have never been, in particular, to the Maryland chapter. So it was just really lovely to meet all those folks. I had a listener come up who, unfortunately, I did not catch her name, but she's a psychiatrist. And she mentioned multiple times that she loves listening to the show and she loves how much focus we put on mental health. And she was very excited to come to that program on Saturday to see the film and to really hear, just like the community's experiences with their own mental health. I was blown away. The room was huge and it was packed, which is really lovely. It was really lovely to see. And I think I was shocked that we had to talk back as we always do. Hannah Berry, who's one of our collaborators and contributors here on Bloodstream, she facilitated the talk back. And of course, Debbie De La Riva, who's our beloved Debbie in our community, our counselor, our licensed counselor, was there to facilitate that talk back. And it went on for an hour. It was like, I think Hannah said it was 51 minutes, and she's never had a talk back that long. And people just shared their experiences. People asked questions. It was the first time that they really acknowledged, I think, some of their own mental health challenges and struggles in their life. It was really powerful. It was really, really, really powerful to just have that space, that really safe space where you're with your community, you're with your bleeding disorder blood family, and you can kind of share a little bit about what your experiences have been related to mental health. And it's important. It's just so important to continue to acknowledge it, to continue to share and to find those safe spaces in order to kind of take those steps to really feel in control.
So if you're listening, if you're a chapter executive director, program director, board member, active community member, and you'd be interested in a screening of Let's Talk, reach out and let us know. Mailbag at bloodstreammedia.com or ping Amy or I on social media. You know, all that stuff we say at the end of the podcast. And we'd be happy to help facilitate that. They are booked through Sanofi, who underwrote Let's Talk Mental Health, that documentary. But we're happy to facilitate those. And to Amy's point, it can be an exceptionally unique opportunity to have a room full of people who watch something about mental health that resonates so specifically because it's about our community, and it can open people up. I've experienced that at talkbacks that I've been to. Amy just described that from this past weekend in Maryland, when people are given the opportunity to see and hear themselves in the stories of others and then invited to speak about that. That is an environment for conversation and dialogue, especially around something as sensitive as mental health. And sometimes putting a sign on the door that says mental health session doesn't compel the same kind of personal sharing and connection as does watching a film like Let's Talk and then having time afterwards to talk. So I'm so proud of that. I'm so glad we're still doing it. And thanks for putting a little spotlight on that today, Amy. Appreciate that.
No, that's awesome. Those are good words. You here, PJL, here.
Here, indeed. So, Amy, where do we go from here?
Here, we're going to go to gene therapy.
Okay. Ask and answered.
Terrible. Ask and answered. No. I think I'm really excited about the gene therapy segment this month because it's a real life success story. I think this is such a massive step forward in science. It's a massive step forward in our experiences living with hemophilia, in particular with hemophilia B. And it just is important to kind of hear those stories, to hear what it's been like for other folks. Today, we have the story of Dominic and his mother. Dominic has gone through the infusion of hemophilia B gene therapy, and we're going to hear about his story, his first, hand insights about how his life was changed. And I think he had some specific, lifestyle priorities that really impacted his decision making. And so, Hannah, take it away. Let's hear from Dominic and his mom.
Welcome back to Gene Therapy, a whole new world. It's your girl, Hannah, and today we are diving into the real life side of gene therapy. Now, I know it can sound kind of futuristic, but for families living with hemophilia, it's not science fiction. It's here, and it's real, and it is changing lives. But before we jump in, here is a quick word from our sponsor. It's a whole new world gene therapy segment brought to you by CSLBehring and their hemophilia B gene therapy treatment. To learn more about gene therapy, hear patient stories, and view additional support resources, visit beyondhemb.com or download B Support wherever you get your apps for more information and to manage your treatment journey. Alrighty, let's get into it. So I got the chance to meet with Dominic, a young man living with hemophilia B, and his mom, Brianna. Together, they have been on a roller coaster ride with the ups and the downs of infusions, of bleeds, and the constant worry that comes with them. But now they are experiencing what gene therapy can make possible. For Dominic, growing up with hemophilia meant every day carried its own set of challenges. from sticking to an infusion routine to always taking those extra precautions.
Before gene therapy and I was doing my prophy, when I was living at home, things were a little different. If I didn't remember and take the initiative to do it myself, it would always be my mom to make sure that I did my medicine until I was about, I don't know, like 11 or 12. And then I learned how to self infuse. And then that's when it just started to become a hassle for me.
It was a learning experience for both of us because we didn't know about the hemophilia when I had him. So that was like a complete a complete shock. At the end of the day, it was kind of just like always me and him figuring it out.
Now, as Dominic got older, that independence brought a little bit of freedom and a few new hurdles. Because for anyone with hemophilia, treatment isn't something you can just leave behind. It sneaks into almost every part of your daily life.
I was doing it once a week. I was just getting tired of doing it. And then I went to college, and then my mom wasn't with me to remind me to do my medicine all the time. So I would go days, weeks without doing my medicine just until it finally got to a point where, like, all right, it's been long enough.
And just when you think that's the hardest part,
calling to order my medicine, that was probably the second thing that I hated doing the most. It's like a 15-minute phone call, and then they just ask you the same questions every time.
So while Dominic was figuring out his own independence, Brianna had her own set of challenges. Raising a kid with severe hemophilia meant nonstop worry and even more hospital visits than she could count.
When you have somebody who has something as severe hemophilia, your anxiety like goes through the roof all the time. Like every time your phone rings, if he's not with you, you're worried about just like his medication, like making sure you stayed on top of that, like that you had enough, that you had to know the difference between when he started going on prophylactics, you had to know the difference between prophylactic dose and bleed dose. And you needed to know how to communicate that with the hemophilia team. It was very stressful and very like overwhelming, especially since, I was such a young mom.
Before saying yes, there were a lot of conversations, sorting through the worries, the hopes, and the what ifs.
This was one of his concerns when he thought about doing the gene therapy. He was just like, well, what if it doesn't work and then I can't ever get anything again? I said, well, we waited 18 years for this. I said, so medicine changes every day. Like they're constantly working on things in every medical aspect of the world. So who's to say that if this one doesn't work, that in 10, 15 years that there won't be another one?
While Brianna was thinking about long-term hopes and fears for Dominic, the day-to-day grind of treatment was always front and center for Dominic.
But it never wasn't on the back of my mind. Like, I was still cautious of the fact that I had to do my medicine. Just ignored it. If I had to add up all of the times that I would have the thought, like, oh, snap, you gotta do your medicine, where I'm somewhere else or like just out and about living life, I would say at least 5 to 10 hours out of the day, maybe. Just hemophilia in general. You always have to be cautious of the fact that you have hemophilia. So it's like, it's not something that should never just be absent from your mind, living life as a hemophilia patient, even after gene therapy. Just that my doctor reminded me of that today.
Even with all of those obstacles, Dominic showed that go-getter attitude, taking charge of his own care, even when it meant learning how to self-infuse.
I was extremely proud of him. When I was infusing him, that was hard for me to do. I couldn't imagine doing that to myself.
So that's why gene therapy was such a big deal. For Dominic, it wasn't just about fewer bleeds. It was about totally changing the path of his life.
I remember my mom told me when we found out about gene therapy that the doctors, when I was born, told her that 18, 20 years down the line, there would be like a big jump in hemophilia. When I went from taking my medicine twice a week, once a week, to not taking it at all. I thought I would be infusing until I was at least 30.
When I got the call, it was a very emotional call, to be honest with you. I mean, I cried with the nurse practitioner on the phone. I remember his Dr. Travis, like she always said, like when he's 18, 19, there would be big changes in the hemophilia B world. And I was just like, okay. And then when you get that call, it's just like, wow, what? I know when I heard about the gene therapy, there was never kind of like any setback for me. It was kind of like, okay, he has to do this. But at the same time, I had to remember that he's a 18 or 19, however old he was. I was like, this is a major decision. Like, I can't make this decision for him. Being able to risk the long-term benefits with the short-term benefits, I was extremely proud of him, like that he could take that mentality and be able to make this work for him.
It took a few months of weighing the pros and the cons and having all the right talks, but in the end, well, the results pretty much say it all.
My biggest hope, and this was all I needed to be happy and like content with me taking gene therapy, was just being able to stop infusing, just not being able to infuse and being able to live the lifestyle that I want freely without always worrying. Now that I have gene therapy, I could do the things that I normally do without the worrying aspect of it.
Dominic got that taste of freedom, but a choice this big? Well, there is no flying solo. It takes the whole crew.
This is a decision that he needs to make. And then it was just kind of like us coming together with us and then our family and the team at CHOP and just weighing all the pros and cons. We talked about his fears or like his setbacks with why he wouldn't want to do it, and then versus why he should do it. And then he ultimately made the decision that he made.
Of course, for Brianna, gene therapy meant something completely different, especially when college life meant he was out of her sight.
The reason why I kind of wanted him to do it was because, selfishly saying, it gave me that peace of mind, because I knew that once he went to college, I knew he wasn't doing his medicine when he was supposed to be doing it. Did I know it was as bad as it ended up being? No. But I knew he wasn't doing the medicine. And then, it's when they're away from you like that, it was just more worrisome. It was just like, is he doing his medicine? Like, is he remembering to order his medicine? Because sometimes the pharmacy would call me instead of calling him. And then I would say, did you order your medicine? He'd be like, yeah, no.
My expectations matched, absolutely. After I got gene therapy, my doctor thought that I would have to infuse for at least 1 or 2 more weeks. But after we got my first results back, I didn't have to infuse at all. My doctor made the decision to just stop my infusions. It's been a year and some change now since I've infused. I haven't had to infuse. I haven't had any bleeds. I've just been living my life freely.
All that freedom is great, but a year later, how is Dominic's factor level actually holding up?
If anything, I thought my factor levels would either just stay the same or, if anything, like lower a little bit. But actually, I met with my doctor in May when I was done my junior year, and then my factor went up. It was actually the highest it has been. I saw my doctor today too. He reminded me of this, but he said that the test in May was the highest my factor levels had been since they got the baseline of my factor levels at the beginning of my gene therapy. So that was kind of shocking. I didn't think that it would work that way. I've just been grateful and taking advantage of the opportunities, I guess, that I've been provided with.
The numbers were impressive, but the bigger change, the more peace of mind and pride it brought to both of them.
I think it's a big release off your shoulders. Like, you could take a deep breath in knowing, like, it's one less thing that I don't have to sit here and stress about every day. And then just to be proud of him, because it wasn't easy.
Dominic and Brianna's story shows us just how transformative gene therapy can really be. Not just in the lab results, but in the freedom it gives back to the families who've lived with hemophilia every single day. Their journey is truly a reminder that treatment is never just medical, it's personal. And we are not stopping here. In our next episode, we're taking you on the road to the Bleeding Disorders Conference in Denver. We sat down live with doctors and patients to dig deeper into the future of gene therapy and what joint health means for our community. Until then, it's your girl, Hannah, and you won't want to miss what's next.
Thank you again to Hannah. Thank you again, as always, to Dominic and his mom. Thank you for sharing your story. Patrick, who do we have next? We have a TikToker.
We're about that life. And
we're hip. We're hip. We're finally hip.
I've been trying to be a little more active on TikTok because we as Bloodstream Media and Believe Limited are on there. And so I'm trying to see what we're doing and support it as I can. And I discovered through looking at hemophilia hashtags this TikToker named Jessica Lockie, who is a prolific content creator. We'll talk about that. But what caught my attention was this series that she did on hemophilia B caregiving. as she has a son with hemophilia B. So I won't step on the interview at all, but that's what you're about to hear. So let's toss it over to the interview with Jessica Lockey. Jessica Lockey is a content creator, a storyteller, an educator, a mom, and a caregiver of a son with hemophilia B. And she joins me now today on Bloodstream. Jess, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously we're going to talk some hemophilia stuff, but before we get to that, as you are a prolific content creator, I would love to talk to you about Learn with Jess. Can you tell us what exactly is Learn with Jess?
Well, actually it started as teaching content and teaching skits, and I was trying to bring more awareness of some of the struggles that teachers go through, and I was trying to bring a positive light on how parents can communicate more effectively with teachers, especially if their children are having struggles. And to be honest, I don't think the feedback was what I was expecting. And so over time, I transitioned more into fictional skits just for entertainment. And I do try to bring little themes in there once in a while for fun, like we shouldn't judge people or we don't know the whole story, things like that. So now it's mostly around fictional skits. And I try to also bring in different skits around hemophilia as well. But I don't share my son's face or his name. So that sometimes can be a little tricky. And I try to share basic facts around hemophilia, such as bruising is a big symptom you're going to see. If you don't know your child has hemophilia, they're going to get bruising very easily. But I try to also keep that very general and not specific to my son.
That's very fair. And as a parent of a 4.5-year-old who I want to advocate for and whose lived experience is relevant to advocacy work I do, I also want to respect her privacy and that she's not old enough to consent in the ways that I am. So I appreciate that you have that point of view. What first motivated you to start creating content of any kind online?
So I was a teacher for 4 years of my own classroom. And before that, I did student teaching. I was a teacher's aide. And then I eventually got my own classroom. And I had my daughter. And then we got surprise pregnant with our son. And at that time, I was also going to school to become a trauma counselor. So I had finished my clinical hours. And I was set to do my internship. All I had left in May. And we found out in March our son had a bleeding disorder. So we put that on hold. And just being home more often, I was like researching hemophilia, and then teaching skits came across my feed, and it kind of pushed me more into thinking, oh, I could share teaching stories. And I also felt on another level that there wasn't a lot of hemophilia videos out there, which makes sense. It's rare. I mean, not everyone's going to get online and share that. So I started talking more about that, but I transitioned away from that because I was just like, I don't want that to be the main focus. I want to kind of focus on something else, but still bring awareness. So I just kind of got pushed in by staying home, thinking maybe this is something I could do as a hobby. That's just my own, being away from just being a mom. So that's kind of what pushed me into that.
That makes sense. Have you found, since you started posting about hemophilia, have you gotten other moms or patients or people contacting you or commenting or giving you any kind of feedback?
Yeah, actually, I get quite often not a lot. I've had like 2 people reach out asking about port implants. And actually, that was one of the first things I reached out to somebody else about before we got our son's port implant was, what's the process? What's the surgery like? Because it's kind of scary to think your 1-year-old's going to go in for surgery.
Totally.
Is this worth it? On another note, yes, I'm very thankful for port implants. That's an option that our insurance accepted it. Infusions themselves are difficult with a child, but the port implant just makes everything so much smoother. And then, yes, I also get parents reaching out to me asking, like, how can we get him comfortable with infusions? Or the biggest one, which breaks my heart, is we just found out our child has hemophilia. I feel like my world is crumbling. This is so hard. And it is. It's very hard when you first find that out.
So let's follow up on that. What do you tell people when they reach out to you with that, my world is falling apart, life as I knew it is going to be different? What have you found yourself responding with?
I tell them that's a completely normal response, that nothing is your fault. And this may not be the best advice, but this is the advice that stuck to me the most from everyone. With time, it gets easier, and it will be your new normal. And that every day, before I even started doing my son's infusions, it was super hard. We had to like hold him down when I was learning because I'm not a nurse. So I can't have him moving while I'm trying to learn. So my husband had to be there to hold him down. And that's hard in itself. And you can't just skip infusion week. I mean, he has to have his infusion. He's severe. And so I just kept telling myself, with time, this will get easier. With time, this will get easier. And this is our new normal. And it is. Every week on Friday, it's our new normal that we do his infusion, and we try to get him to be more involved too. That's a big part of my advice is he gets snacks. So we ask him, what snacks do you want? Did I ever think I'd be giving my son vanilla pudding at 9 a.m.? No, I did not. But at the end of the day, if it makes him comfortable, I don't care. And so that's giving him a lot of option in it too. Do you want to do the infusion now, the numbing cream now, or soon? Okay, we set a timer for 3 minutes. So little things like that I try to help parents with, and just knowing they're not alone. There is a community as well. I know it can be overwhelming too, trying to even getting in support group and reading everything, but over time it gets easier. It's your new normal, and it's just something that's a part of our life.
And how has it changed the way in which you parent his older sibling?
Well, like when they get into physical altercations, we try to explain to our daughter, who's older, he has hemophilia. So I know that sometimes our brother annoys us, but we can't hit him on the head. And he's been getting infusions since he was about 10 months old. And so she's been through the whole process. So it was very interesting. When she got older, she said, when I was a baby, I had infusions. And we're like, oh, no, you never had infusions, just your brother. And then she goes, when I was a baby, I had a port implant. And we're like, oh, no, you never had a port implant. So she tries to connect this is a normal thing you do as a baby. She's still not really connecting this is specific to her brother.
Right. Well, it's endearing, though, that it's an effort to connect and to relate to him and to try to feel closer. That's how it comes off to me anyway. That piece is quite endearing. Mm-hmm. Is there anything, and maybe with time it will get easier is the answer, but is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew at the time of his diagnosis?
Our life isn't that different. I couldn't picture what is our life going to look like. Now he's still young, he's not in school. And I think my biggest fear now is knowing that he's going to grow up eventually knowing he's different. Specifically, it just will come to me. I'll be watching a movie and the kid in college has diabetes, and all of a sudden the kid will internalize, why do I have to have this? Why can't I go to the bonfire and have s'more? He'll try to connect it back to something he's doing. And so he has to go check his blood sugar, and he just wants to be with his friends. And it'll just hit me oh, my son's going to go through that too. Maybe wild boys are jumping off a cliff and my son's going to be yeah, I can't do that. This can be serious. It's just little things like that. Or, I had my infusion on Thursday and it's already Wednesday. I probably can't jump off the cliff. So I think looking back, I know our life isn't that different now. It's just now just transitioning into what is our life going to continually look like as he gets older. But yeah, it's not that different other than he gets weekly infusions. He's only had 2 breakthrough bleeds too, so that wasn't too bad. So just knowing that life isn't going to be that different, and you just learn as you go, and it's not that bad. It's not that bad. He can go to the park. He can go to the splash pad. He can go to a children's museum. When we travel, we just put his stuff in a bag, and that's his medical kit. And so it's not anything that's going to hinder your life in any way,
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that, especially the piece about travel, because I know that can be pretty intimidating, especially for parents of younger children or a first-time diagnosis. Did you have family history of hemophilia, or is your son the first diagnosis?
Yeah, so he was the first diagnosis. It was we got his blood tested, and he does have the most general mutation, which was kind of good news in a way, because then when we have the most general mutation, there's a lot more studies for that specific medication and stuff. So I was well, at least that was a good piece of news. But yeah, it was a mutation, and I had a very normal pregnancy. He was a very big, healthy baby. The only thing I noticed that was way different than being pregnant with my daughter is I felt like I was starving all the time. So I don't know. I always want to ask other moms and then I forget. So I don't know if that's a case of hemophilia or that was just him. But yeah, everything was completely normal until we started noticing his bruising around 4 months.
Interesting. All right. So if there's other moms out there listening, if you also had an experience of being abnormally hungry during the pregnancy of your child with hemophilia, let us know. We're conducting an informal survey here, mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com.
Yes.
You mentioned support groups and the kind of the various things that are out there. There's online groups, there's live groups, there's regional groups, there's national groups, there's this federation, there's this foundation. what have you found personally for you has been most helpful in terms of support?
So our case manager for his treatment, I don't know if this is the case for everyone, but we have a pharmacy we use, and then we talk to a case manager. And so I tell her all the supplies I need weekly. She's been a huge support, and she actually runs the online Facebook group as well. So I think for me, the biggest thing is just, which I'm so thankful she's okay with. Some people have boundaries, but anytime I have any concerns, I text her, even if it's like 7 p.m. One time he had a really big bruise, and I text her, was like, what should I do? And so just having that one person you can reach out to who knows about it is really helpful. If there's one person you could have a support, and maybe not a family member, because sometimes that's a lot on them too, but having someone who's outside of it but that knows about it is really helpful. That's a huge thing. And then, yeah, having that online support group, even if it's too much to look at first, at least join it. And then later on, it's there as a support if you have any questions. We recently moved last year because we were living in a smaller town, and the medical care was just not good. So we actually moved closer to a hemophilia center, and I know not everyone can do that. But I'm very thankful because they have dinners and they have get-togethers, and that has been huge and super helpful. And like when he had his breakthrough bleed, we went right to the hematologist. She was able to check it that morning. So just having that immediate care has also been really helpful.
That's great. That kind of immersion in community, because you never know when you may need to reach out, need extra support, or, oh, I remember so and so brought up that they were having trouble with the thing and the thing. I'm going to reach out to them now that we're having trouble with the thing. And I
Mhm.
found that in my life to be the case over 40 years with hemophilia. So it's encouraging to hear all of that. I want to switch gears though and ask you, do you ever miss teaching?
No.
Okay.
So when I did my clinical hours for my trauma counseling degree, they had me teaching classes, and I actually did enjoy that. I did enjoy teaching. It was in a rehab facility, but it was much more enjoyable. I like teaching in general, and that's probably why I create content. But being a teacher it was very overwhelming, and I think resources just keep getting cut more and more. And I mean, it's been very overwhelming. And then now I know with COVID, it's been even worse after COVID. So I
Yeah.
I don't, but I miss teaching in general, but I don't miss like being a teacher in a classroom. It was just very
Hmm.
stressful. I lived there. My husband would call me at like 7 p.m. be like, you just need to come home. You can't be in your classroom anymore. It's just because we don't have enough resources. So I'm planning everything. I'm making worksheets from scratch. I'm buying all the resources for anything. When I taught science, I had to buy all of that. And so I think maybe if it was under different circumstances, but it was very stressful.
Yeah, it sounds it the way you describe it. Okay, well that clears that up. And I want, we connected as you reminded me last year, but then reconnected online because I discovered some of your videos on TikTok about your son and about life with hemophilia. But you also have that's only a portion of what you post about, and I wanted to ask. There's a fair amount of skits that revolve around a bakery and bakery life and things going on inside a bakery. What is it about a bakery and the world of baking that intrigues you so?
That was like by accident. So I had a whole other skit line about a couple, and it just so happens he went into a bakery and was sold bad cupcakes. And then it just totally took on a world of its own. So I love writing. I eventually would love to write a book, just fiction stories. And so the bakery gives me a world that is completely outside of anything that feels stressful, because I feel like my own personal life can have a stressful moments. Having two young kids, being a stay-at-home mom, all that, like that shit in itself is a new season of life. And so
Mm,
the bakery, it gives me a whole world of creativity, but it's not personal. And another reason I don't share a lot about my son is because it affects me very much. If someone says something negative, it like takes a toll on my mental health. And which is another reason I don't think children should be online. Like I said, you don't share his name, his face, anything like that. So the bakery world it's very safe for me to put my creativity out there. If someone has something negative, I don't take it personal because it's a fiction story, So it just allows me to be creative, have something that's an outlet, but it's not connected to me to the point to where it's going to affect my mental health.
that's really smart and good self-protection there. something all content creators need to be conscious of, right? Is your own mental health, your own vulnerability. So I applaud you for taking care of yourself. Is there any message that you have for caregivers? We have a fair amount of caregivers who listen to this podcast. Is there any final message that you have for caregivers of people with hemophilia out there?
You should have asked me this 2 days ago so I could have thought of more about it. That's a tough one. I just think in my own perspective, as a caregiver of a little boy who has hemophilia, I'm just thankful. Man, I'm just so thankful there's treatment.
I hear that. Knowing that 95% of rare diseases don't have a single FDA-approved medication, and we in the hemophilia world are fortunate to have options, it certainly puts in perspective what could be against what is. So I appreciate that point of view. Well, Jessica Locke, Learn with Jess. You can find her on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, anywhere else that people should keep an eye out for?
No, that's about it.
All right, cool.
That's
we'll
plenty.
include links. There'll be links in the program notes. Jess, thanks for coming on and doing this with me. I really appreciated the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Jessica, and thank you, Dominic, and his mom. Thank you, Hannah, for that matter. And thanks, as always, to our presenting sponsor, Takeda, bleedingdisorders.com for more. And thanks as well to CSLBehring for supporting the gene therapy segment. We could not produce this show without your support, and we are grateful for it. All right, Bordeaux, next episode comes out on October 10th, 10/10. How about that? What can listeners expect to hear on 10/10?
Holy smokes. We have a dude with hemophilia A who swam 13 miles in a channel. Stay tuned, everybody.
And if that doesn't do it, then nothing I say is going to compel you. So there it is. Right. Stay tuned. 13 miles. And it's coming up next. In a channel. Actually, it is actually an extraordinary accomplishment, but we're going to talk more about that on the next episode.
It is. Yeah, it's crazy.
With that, that is all for this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Bloodstream Podcast wherever you listen to have that next episode delivered to you the moment it goes live.
Yes, please, loyal listeners. And as always, please email us at mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com. You can inquire about Bloodstream Media and Believe Limited casting opportunities, which is awesome. And again, just to share your story, we love hearing from you. We are on social media as well, on Bloodstream Media, Believe Limited, and Patrick and I as human individuals. So follow us on all the things, please.
I am your host and human individual, Patrick James Lynch.
And I am your other host and other human individual, Amy Board.
And until next time, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.